everybody, if we could grab our seats. I think we're going to be able to finish before 7:45, but let's not start at 7:35 to prove my point. All right, so folks, we're going to start with our wrapping up the hearing on Birdo. I do want to just mention we have three counselors online, I believe. We're joined online by counselors Bixby, Damobed, and Kalis, at least as far as I see. I'll do my best to keep us all apprised of anyone else who joins. But just a couple of points. We held this item open in case there were any additional questions that came up. The public comment period concludes on Wednesday, right? The April 1st, is that correct?
Yes.
Yep, great. Thank you, sir. Joining us again tonight are both Sam Nyman and Darius Bailey from the City's Sustainability Office. They're here to answer any additional questions that we might have, or at least get back to us with any questions they can't answer on the spot. Let's see, before I open the floor, did you guys want to just like spin through any of the topics or things that you've been hearing so that at least we're aware of some of the other questions you've had and answered so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I can. So the first thing that we wanted to kind of bring up and do hopefully a better job of explaining is the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund. So we did get a lot of questions following, from counselor questions mostly about what exactly is that fund, what goes into it, how is it, like where do the projects go? And so hopefully it might help to run through just a little bit more information about what the fund does. So the fund is set up as basically a repository, a place to put any penalties or payments made pursuant to Birdo. So whenever there's a penalty enforced, whenever somebody makes a alternative compliance payment to get into compliance under Birdo, all of that money will go into this Equitable Emissions Investment Fund. So it's not a yearly thing. It's not there's not going to be regular additions to the money there. What's there, it will depend entirely on how out of compliant buildings in Newton are. And the goal with the fund is to take that money and then invest it into other decarbonization projects. So as to say, like, okay, these people were unable to meet their goals for decarbonization, or their limits for decarbonization. They're going to have to pay to decarbonize other things within the city, so that those projects will be, we hope those project proposals for funding will come from a wide variety of places. So hopefully nonprofits, commercial, residential, potentially even city projects, depending on if there's a need or if there's a desire from the community to do those. And the goal would be set up some criteria approved through the mayor's office, which we would then use to evaluate each of those projects as they come in and ask for funding from the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund, and then give that funding out to the best projects that apply. So that's hopefully a better explanation, a better background for what the fund is all about. That was the main thing that I wanted to get out ahead of, but I think happy to open the floor up now to the sort of general questioning.
All right, great. So opening the floor up to comments and questions. Anybody? Councilor Baker, first hand I see.
Not directly within the scope of the regulations which you're adjusting, including some technical corrections, but we talked a bit about the process of coming back to the council with some amendments that seemed appropriate to the ordinance itself. And I just wanted to see if you had any comment about the scope of that and the timing.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it. So I think my main focus as borough administrator at the moment is to get the ship up and running, so to speak, and make sure that we have a sort of a repeatable, functional set of points and set of processes, so that every year we can uh, count on exactly when in the year and we're getting information, when in the year we're getting it out to uh, residents, constituents, and how quickly we can turn around those, the data quality, the like all of these little pieces of administrative work that need to get put into place. So I think I'm fairly confident that certainly by the end of this year we'll have to have figured most of that out, and I think we're ahead of that schedule. I think by the end of summer we will. I feel pretty confident that we'll have most of the groundwork laid to be able to carry out the next year or two at least regularly and without you know much without any like serious issues that we'd have to come back to. So I think we feel confident that you know once we've gotten that built, that infrastructure built, we can start really doing research, in-depth research into what we think are the best changes to make to uh, the ordinance, and then come back with a plan for that. So my estimation is about a year from now is when we would have we feel comfortable with like having well researched recommendations.
In, yeah, I just wanted to add at least two of the um, things that the Birdo Advisory Commission and we as staff thought, um, you know, could be improved in the ordinance. One being we want to change the 5-year verification requirement. Back, so it's not backwards looking that you have to verify everything from the previous 5 years, but to function more as a spot check. And then the other piece was instituting an appeals process for the hardship compliance plan application kind of process. Both of those are not things that Darius or I think that we're going to need to. I mean, obviously, the sooner the better with everything, but the 5-year look back period won't start for 5 years from now, and we won't, I believe, start getting hardship applications for at least 2 years, would be my conservative estimate. So we've got a little time before those things are beating down on the door, at least those two things, which I think were the two main things that came out of the advisory commission process. But obviously, the sooner the better. We'll keep an urgency about it.
All set? Great. Councilor Block.
I was going to ask, thank you, Mr. President. I was going to ask about the hardship definition and procedures. It seemed like that was one of those things that was left unaddressed, and I'm wondering whether there's a determination to address it, and or to leave it in some sort of vague way. Maybe there's an argument for doing that. I'm not sure, but I thought that maybe deserved just more airing. Just was wondering where that was. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So as it stands right now, our approach to hardship is really has really been crafting it in such a way that it's an appeal to residents or building owners in this case to make a case to us about their hardship. So while our regulations as they are now do lay out quite a lot of different potential options or potential concerns that may, you know, create a hardship, um, we were careful to leave it a little bit open-ended so that we would give building owners the opportunity to make a case based off of something that we didn't like expect. Um, and so the way that we're thinking about it and the way that we've attempted to structure our regulations is to say hardship, you like it's the building owner's prerogative to say, okay, we believe we have a hardship because XYZ, you know, either it, you know, hopefully it relates to something that we've laid out in regulations, and then explain to us in detail why that hardship makes it unreasonably difficult or impossible to um, get under your Berto emission standards. And we intend to, so that's the sort of baseline of how hardship will function. As far as the criteria and how we're going to judge that, that's going to be something we'll have to work through extensively over the next few months to put together criteria that we feel good about and that we think is makes sense to not just us in sustainability, but across different like departments within the city. So I think that is hopefully the right structure to go. I think that's the most reasonable way to account for potential problems down the road.
Just to speak a little bit more about something you touched on, Darius, there, which is kind of, there's a couple ways you could go, right, with the hardship kind of evaluation process. One is if you meet XYZ criteria, then you get XYZ relief. That would have an advantage in clarity, but through the advisory commission process, Darius, and the advisory commission, really what we thought the intention and the value of the hardship compliance plan process was give us the ability as staff to recognize where property owners are. There are a lot of buildings that are more or less difficult to decarbonize. There are a lot of complicated financial circumstances property owners could find themselves in. There are a lot of, tenant situations that they could have that could present some difficulties with work in the building. So we felt like if the objective was you've got to meet X, Y, Z, what was going to happen is we were going to not be able to really work with property owners to ultimately help get this whole building stock to decarbonize over time. It's not so much the 1 year, 2 year deadline as it is the long-term plan that we wanted them to kind of go through here. So it's kind of an exercise in long-term planning. Every hardship compliance plan is going to have to come with a actual proposal for relief. And the relief is not that you don't have to meet the requirements of Berto. It's perhaps a slightly different time frame for a particular emission standard or something like that. So that was a little bit of the intent, just to spell out a little bit the intention that Darius spoke to. But we did try to there, speak to the different types of circumstances and characteristics that would kind of, we would think, constitute a hardship. But again, it's not, even if you meet one of those, it's a further exercise because it can't just be that you have this circumstance. It has to further be that that's actually inhibiting you from doing any kind of work in your building to meet the standard. So there's going to have to be some interpretation somewhere along the way in that process. So hope that was helpful.
It is interesting. I feel very uncomfortable about this. It seems to me that whatever hardship means, that it needs to be grounded in the ordinance. That if the ordinance doesn't circumscribe this, then the regulation, I'm not sure it's valid. The regulation can't just be thought up without regard to what the ordinance says should happen. So, you know, your two different models of how to reach hardship, I think they're interesting and deserve some thought. I think in fairness to any building owner in the future who finds themselves in some financial circumstance or their building being particularly difficult to meet these requirements, they should know what to expect. They should know what their what's going to be demanded of them, and they should know what this process is going to be, quite apart from the appeal process. I feel we really need some serious work on this, and that the ordinance. Maybe there's enough in the ordinance right now. I don't know, but I think we ought to think very hard about that. To me, this is going to come down to money. This is an expensive venture that we're embarking on. It's going to be more expensive for some people, less expensive for others. It's not that something's going to be impossible. That's kind of unlikely. But if it's possible, but in the opinion of a landowner, that would force them into bankruptcy. I mean, is that sort of the test? Well, you know, just where are we on this? And it just feels awfully slippery. Just to me, that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Just wanted to add that correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but nothing in what we laid out in the regulations, to my knowledge, conflicts in any way with what was in the ordinance. If anything, I think we just elaborated on what was laid out in the ordinance to some detail. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to comment. Is that we feel pretty confident that we don't have any conflicts between what we have in regulations and what is in ordinance.
All set, Counselor? All set? Great. Counselor Leary.
Thank you very much. This is a good opportunity for me to just to have a look at how it's been going so far in terms of the reception by property owners, how the portfolio manager training or any other additional training has been going. And since Boston's a couple of years ahead of us, maybe more, they seem to me that it would be good to look at them to see what they run into in order to sort of, we could expect something like that. So has Boston started penalties for noncompliance at this point? Because I think they might have started that. I haven't been actually following it, and I should have looked that up before. But so I'm just those are my questions. Just kind of getting a feel for how this project is moving ahead, and I understand we're just doing the larger buildings at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Boston is scheduled for this upcoming year to start their enforcement on emissions limits. So they've yet to do it so far, but starting 2 months from now, that'll be a different story.
Was it
So we'll
delayed
learn a lot.
though? Wasn't it supposed to come sooner? I thought they would have started it
Not
last year.
for Boston. Boston has always been their timeline has always been for this upcoming for this year. There have been other jurisdictions that have delayed. Off the top of my head, Denver and I think partial delay for New York City as well. New York City was supposed to start enforcing last year, and they've sort of partially delayed. I'm not super. I don't understand all exactly how they've configured their delay. But yeah, Boston has yet to start. As to, could you remind me the other question?
I was asking about the overall reception and how the trainings have been going for, you know, for the owners or managers of these buildings, like portfolio manager training, reporting training, or any other additional training that has been underway.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
I can take that to start, Darius, because we're just about to get into our 2026 reporting year series of trainings, starting with reporting and utility data access that we've been working with both NGrid and Eversource to plan out. But last year, I had a very well attended portfolio manager specific training for the property owners. There were a good handful of questions that were, you know, of the what the heck are you guys making us do kind of variety, but not overwhelmingly, and got some good feedback from folks. Last year it was very much I would say the more kind of experienced at energy tracking sort of buildings where it's over 100,000 square foot commercial. So they generally have facility managers on staff that do that work already. But getting them the hang of exactly what we wanted them to do or requiring them to do. Darius in particular, around the kind of deadline and in the data quality after process, had plenty of opportunity to connect with many of the property owners and help them along. So even within that kind of more experienced set, there was a lot of outreach for help. But this year I anticipate more, but hopefully we have a good set of trainings that will help to mitigate the rush of requests for help towards the end.
So going kind of as expected?
Yeah,
I would say so, yeah.
We had our first year of reporting, it was a small set. We had 50 buildings that were expected to report. We got 49 buildings reporting, so only one that was still outstanding. And so we feel pretty good that at least for a first year of getting the reporting word out there and teaching people how to do the reporting, it was a good test run. We have a lot more to do, especially over the next few months here, as we kind of fill out our suite of guides, tutorials, etc., for building owners to report. So, you know, especially as we get to the larger group, which is scheduled to report in or by September.
And I'll just add bravo in particular to you, Darius, on getting all but one property owner to send us their data. That was actually much better than I thought we were going to do the first year. So yeah, huge kudos.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
And who's going after that last? Hold on. No, don't answer that question. Councilor Charm.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was curious about the fees. And this is something that may be more in the realm of the ordinance versus the regulations. But I would benefit from learning a little bit more about how we ascertain the fine line of what's the right amount to be um, to be charging people instead of their compliance. So the alternative compliance payments, um, because I could imagine, if that is too low, then they might say, "I'll just write a check." And then we won't actually move the needle on this. But if it is too high, then that could be also really punitive. So would love to hear your thoughts on, do you think that the number, how do we get there? Do you think the number is, roughly the right number? And are the regulations or the ordinance written in a way that we can adjust those over time?
Absolutely. So there's, I want to start with a distinction. So there's alternative compliance payments, and then there's penalties. So alternative compliance payments are something you can do to stay technically in compliance with the ordinance um, by paying this fee. So it's like saying instead of being completely checked out and ignoring you guys and uh, facing fines, I'm going to pay this amount of money uh, per metric ton of carbon that I am over my limit, uh, and stay in compliance uh, with the rest of the ordinance. So I'm paying to stay in compliance, whereas penalties, of course, are you've not done what you did, what you were supposed to do. You've not talked to us at all, and then we have to enforce on it. So that's an important distinction. The number for ACP's alternative compliance payments, that was a calculation for the metric ton of the price per metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent to decarbonize. So it's an average. It's definitely an estimation, and I think, if I remember correctly, it's built into the ordinance that that number can be reconsidered on I believe, 5-year basis. I don't remember the exact timeline, but it can be reviewed and by the sustainability team and updated, and that language is in the ordinance. As far as the penalties, the fines, like for when you are actually out of compliance and not doing your part, those are just limited by state regulations. So those are kind of fixed in the maximum of what the state would allow us to fine.
300 a day.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Mr. Neiman?
No, I think I'm good. Unless you want to follow
Okay.
up. Yeah.
I don't mean to belabor this, but I would love a little sense of, from you all are experts on this topic. You, maybe one way of answering this would be, what percentage do you think of people might say, I'm just gonna give the alternative compliance payment? Like, as you're thinking about the impact that this could have, there will be some degree of folks who will opt out and pay the ACP. So how do you think about that at the number that it's currently set at?
Yeah. Well, I think Sam can speak to this a little bit as well, because he has a better knowledge of the actual costs involved in like materials and machinery and project costs. But basically, the breaking point is, at what point do the ACPs become more expensive than just doing the work, right? And we, I think for every building that we currently that is currently subject to the list, that there is absolutely a time within the timeline across the 25 years, that the ACPs will be such that it'll be cheaper to just do the project and do the work and update your energy system. That, of course, that point comes at different times for different types of buildings. And I think you could argue in some cases that it probably comes later in their timeline than we would ideally like to if we wanted to really push building owners to make changes. But I'll leave it to Sam to give a better idea of sort of how the pricing works out and what the cost benefit analysis of those projects are.
Thanks, Darius. So yeah, the 234 per metric ton of CO2 is set by ordinance to be, I think the ACP payments in general are based on the average cost to decarbonize a building. So with every 5 years, the Bordeaux administrator will review that and make recommendations to this council about whether to update that or not. The 234 number per metric ton was done a few years back, and it was based on kind of I think the levelized cost across a wide variety of possible sort of, decarbonization work, whether energy efficiency, just kind of across the gamut of things. Some of those things are much more expensive than other things to do in your building, particularly when you're talking about the lifetime costs associated with them. So just to add to what Darius said, in some cases you might find it's much easier to do some of those things in your building to reduce your energy use over time. And you might get to a point where now you've got to do the big expensive thing to make that last final step. And that might be where you end up relying more on that. So I do think for most folks that's going to be a good ways down the road, and we'll have a number of opportunities to evaluate that number and make sure it's right. But it is by ordinance defined to be based on the average cost to decarbonize, rather than kind of a policy lever to be more than that, say, for example, to try to push them to take these actions rather than pay. So that's a little more.
Great. Councilor Getz, was your hand up? I couldn't tell.
Wanted to take advantage of Mr. Nyman being here and to speak to the city buildings and our reporting on the city buildings, because I feel as if that's a big piece of this, the initial buildings, and I'd like to know where we are with those. And I know that Commissioner or CE, what is Josh Morris's new title? Is whatever his
COO.
Okay, his new title. He's, he was so on top of whenever we had a new building that was going up that he would actually make them, state of the art in terms of their energy systems. So we're progressing in a very, positive way.
Yep.
But we have many buildings that are not compliant.
Yep.
And I sort of feel as if that's going to be a real issue for us, in terms of the plus minus and thinking about, what we're going to be doing. And I always know that he is doing a really great job of when a system goes down to put in as much as we can in terms of new systems.
Yeah.
So we're progressing, but you have insight that you can really
Yes.
inform us right now, and that would be helpful.
Yeah, happy to speak to that a little bit. By last analysis, our current portfolio of buildings, taking it basically as is, if we go as a portfolio, we would be compliant with our emission standards until 2040. If we take the work that is sort of already programmed to happen over the next decade, that's already kind of in the CIP, with a reasonable expectation that it's in fact going to happen, that should push us out to 2045. We're good. That last final step of completely getting rid of our on-site fossil fuel use in our buildings by 2050. That one will be more challenging. We do have kind of a long-term decarbonization plan that does include every one of our city buildings in it to happen by 2050. It's an aggressive timeline, and this work, as we all know, costs a lot of money and only more money. But we stay committed, you know, with COO Morse's leadership. The Public Buildings Department put in place a kind of sustainable buildings policy that it will continue to guide the work there with everything we do. We have some more challenging buildings. City Hall's one of them, where we're kind of tackling it bit by bit. So anytime there's kind of an HVAC need within the space, we're taking that opportunity to meet that need without kind of fossil fuel use. But an example right now is last year in our ISD offices, you know, we have inadequate both heating and cooling in there, we have had for some time. And what we're going to be doing is putting a heat pump to serve it, ceiling cassettes servicing both back offices and the overall office. And we're going to take that opportunity to then cap the kind of in-unit kind of radiators that are in there at the risers, so they aren't providing heat to it any longer because the heat pumps are going to take care of it. And so that's a little 2,500 square foot slice of City Hall that we just decarbonized. Okay, so little by little, where we can, taking advantage of, with that one, Mass Save had a good incentive for that to help make it work. But it's going to take a lot of work. But we've got some time, and there certainly will on the part of, I think, both city staff, residents here in the community, and this council. So,
All set. Councilor Baker, round two.
This last point in your response makes me aware of the really important opportunity for education this whole ordinance provides, and not just for compliance monitoring and all of that. So I hope that as this process goes on, you'll keep that in mind, because I think that we're really interested in helping people figure out how to do things better, not just to say do the things better. And then the second part is to pick up on Councilor Block's point. We, in the process of passing this ordinance, really put a lot of confidence in the work that went into it in the first place and in the process that would follow. But his point, I think, is a reasonable one, that as you begin to develop expertise, it's always useful to bring it back to the council for the ultimate policy choice, because I'm no fan of the current Supreme Court, but it did make a point that in the Chevron's case that delegation of legislative authority is going to be carefully scrutinized, and we would like at least you to have enough guidance so that if someone raises a challenge to this, which I hope doesn't occur, you've at least got the backstop of a reasonable legislative record behind you, as well as an ordinance. So I would think when you bring this back again, you might think about those as well as the other points you've been asked about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So I don't see any other hands in the chamber. I'm not seeing any online. Sorry, I now see a hand in the chamber. Councilor Block.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the city building questions that Councilor Getz was raising. It's my understanding that it's been the city's policy not to landmark any city structures. But I hope as this work is being done that they're treated as though they're landmarked. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
All set? All right. I only have one additional thought here, and I was hoping that either Darius or Sam, if you could just characterize, if you could, if it's applicable, I'm not even sure, how the building slash property owners throughout the city, either whether they're already kind of affected or about to be this coming year. Um, what are the topics that they're bringing up? I think we've heard a little bit about it tonight, but I'm just like, are you getting a lot of questions? I know we've talked about the education process, embedded in this, but I'm just like, I'm actually interested in the volume as well of kind of the questions slash maybe it even goes to the understanding of the ordinance itself, right? Like, if you could just like characterize that. We don't have to go into all the deep into detail, but I am curious how you're finding that.
Yeah. I would characterize most of the communication thus far as trying to understand how to comply, right? How to work through the system, how to put the data where it needs to go. I think that has been about 80% of the communication, which is of course understandable because this is a first time for quite a few of them. I think beyond just conversation and questions about how, we've had a few people talk to us or ask us about the financial aspects of how to get funding. A couple of people have talked to us about like what the city what the city is doing, and whether we have examples to show, or whether we know of examples that around Boston area, of people who have decarbonized. So I would say that's a lot of the conversation.
Just want to mention that one thing that I did hear a good bit about, in particular, kind of last year as we were first kind of rolling out a lot of stuff, is there's a lot of property owners that actually kind of share these commitments, particularly last year when we had a lot of sort of more campuses and portfolios. People get it. People care. They want to decarbonize their buildings. Our timelines might not always sync up exactly with their timelines, but I would say philosophically, I don't see Dante Capasso, who was a member of the Berto Advisory Commission, but he was an active member of the Advisory Commission. I know he's helped provide input as the ordinance was being crafted as well, and it was actually great having him on the Advisory Commission because he did continually raise to the fore these questions of, how am I supposed to do this in my building by this time frame? And he's somebody that is committed to this work, so balancing those two things, I think, is something that people are wrestling with, that we'll be there wrestling with them with it. So, yeah.
Also very understandable. All right, I see no further hands. So I think we are, as a group, all set. Thank you again, gentlemen, for joining us, especially with, believe it or not, late notice. Thank you. You're more than welcome to hang out and spend some more time with your city councilors as we discuss topics of great interest. But again, thank you very much. I don't know, do we need a 2-minute timeout before we get rolling, or are we good to go? I'm not here. Anybody who needs a timeout, keep going. Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, just as a, sorry? What? Oh, sorry. All right, so we're going to take 2 minutes because apparently there are 2 different Zoom links for the 2 different meetings. So my apologies. We're in a timeout. And we'll see you in a minute.
Recording stopped.
I'm seeing the fans going.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
everybody ready? Couldn't be better. I'm great. I'm great. Go sit down. We're starting. No, I'm good. Thanks. Appreciate it. You know, I brought the strong stuff. That's random. So random. Cans just lit up. Oh, I see. Gotcha. I'd probably hang them up so people can see when I'm online. Well, yeah, yeah. But that might spur me to, anyway. I'm failing. But I'm getting there. Yeah. Good. We're not recording. Okay. Good. All right, are we ready here, Mr. Wilson? I don't think we're.
Recording in progress.
There's no vote tonight, so. Yeah, okay. Just checking. All right, and we're back. So, just as a quick reminder, again, we are being audio and video recorded. This is, I don't know how to characterize it, but I'll call it an irregularly scheduled meeting of, chairs. And since so many of us are here, it's chairs and not chairs. But I do have a couple of agenda items that have been posted that I do want to get through. I also want to make sure that I'm spending enough time or leaving enough time at the end of our time together tonight so that you guys can lob any topics at me that you want to discuss or that you want me to bring content back to the council at a later date. But with that said, and I do actually have these in particular order. The first thing I wanted to start with is we've all seen the note. We continue to have changes going on in the clerk's office. I think we all saw that Cassidy has tendered her resignation. Her last day, I believe, is April the 10th. Did I get that right? Okay, good. And I believe that it's fair to say that we all need to probably be ready to be a little bit patient with Drew and his team as they recover from what I believe is the fourth now opening.
Recording in progress.
We are now being audio and video recorded. Okay, fair enough. So I want to make sure that I really wanted to say that tonight because I think it's going to be very important as we move forward. Right, we're down almost a full handful of folks, and they shoulder a big load. And I know a lot of us rely on our clerks in our clerk's office to do a lot of research, to get committee reports set up, to get all the rooms ready, to do a lot of the work that we rely on. Just as a reminder, it's going to be a little harder for them to do that over the next few weeks or months as they kind of staff back up. Any thoughts, comments on that? Because it's really, that was just kind of that was me saying, hopefully we can be a little patient here. Anybody? Thoughts? Councilor Roach.
Do I need to stand for this? Okay, thank you. What can we do to pitch in, including meeting setup, data entry? I mean, there are 24 of us. Many hands make light work.
I think that's a great question. I'm not quite sure if Mr. Willison would like to address that now or just kind of think on that one, but the offer of help is there, right?
I think in terms of committee meetings, in terms of council meetings and things like that, I think we've got a plan, and I think we're covered. Just there may be other little things that we do that may just take a little bit more time.
Yeah, I'm making a slightly different thing, which is, I, for one, and I imagine that there are others who are willing to pitch in and help carry some of the load. So if you let us know, think about it, creative tasks, copying, filing, shredding.
Shredding is actually quite popular in our office, but yes,
Right
I'll do
into
that. Thank you.
microphone. All right. Well, thank you for the offer, sir. I think that, my hand's in the air as well. If there's anything you need that we can accommodate, I'm happy to do it. Anyone else on that topic? And we can also, obviously, we're in a very informal setting here, even though we're in the formal room. We can obviously come back to that as necessary.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, right?
Yes, sir.
I
Councilor
just, Drew is new here, may not know all of the history, but we do have some people who retired who are still in the city who might be available to come back on a temporary basis just to fill in. So I'll talk to you about that later.
Great, thank you for that. All right, I'm going to keep marching along here, hopefully in the interest of time, but we'll find out. The next large topic I wanted to spend some time on, I don't think I have a choice but to spend time on this topic, but the topic of becoming more or furthering our ability to be transparent to the public. There are no shortage of ideas, no shortage of requests, things that, frankly, I believe we should be able to accommodate. However, given the first item that I just talked about, they might now just require a little bit more lead time before we get to them. For example, we've talked, I believe in the previous chair's meeting, about the meeting summaries, I'm going to call them, that are published out of our committees. There are continuing requests for quoting particular counselors, like including their name, right? Councilor Oliver said, Councilor Silber said this, Councilor Charm disagreed with both of them, what have you. Right now, I have taken up this conversation. I've spoken to the clerk's office. What is that going to take? We're looking at not only AI-based solutions. Everybody's seen those little gizmos that live inside of Zoom that will transcribe a meeting for you. They're not great, but they do a pretty good job. What they cannot do is capture your name unless you say it out loud. And even then, it's still gonna, gosh knows how well it's gonna get the spelling, but it's out there, it's an option. The challenge becomes, what if it misquotes someone? That's actually the reason we don't, or we stopped doing that in the first place. It's a debatable topic. I'm sure that looking around this room of roughly 20 people, there are 45 or so opinions floating around. Now's the time to get them out. But we will, see, there we go, here we go. I just want to say, from my personal perspective, 5 pixels away from the link to look at the summary report is a video recording and audio recording of the entire meeting. So it's not like the information's not there. There's a pretty reliable source right there as well. Might not be as useful for a lot of folks who don't realize that YouTube, all these things are posted to YouTube. I get that. But anyway, I don't believe that, at least in my book, this rises to end of the world scenario. But Councilor Baker, and then Councilor Lucas.
So I want to mention 2 things. One is, I think the open meeting law requires us to keep minutes of meetings, but not a transcript. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. And that the second part is, there's an administrative burden to try and make sure that we get a report done in a timely way. We work on a council's calendar where every 2 weeks there's something coming out from each of the major committees, oftentimes with action behind it. And the policy has been to try and make sure the policy arguments are included, but not necessarily getting every word right, because then we get in a problem of trying to correct records on the floor of the council, and I think it's a mess that's not worth the trouble. So I'm one of the people that thinks the current practice is both efficient and wise, and I would resist changing it. So.
There you have it. Councilor Lucas, followed by Councilor Maliki.
Thank you. So Councilor Lucas is not a huge fan of AI. See what I did there?
I did.
But I agree with the words of Councilor Baker. I like the current practice. The YouTube link, if it's been posted, is included in the reports. And of course, if a councilor has a question on the report, they can always just pick up the phone and call the committee chair and say, hey, who said this? Who said that? What was the meeting like? Was it contentious? Just by reading the report, you may not get that. So communication between councilors is crucial to get the essence of the meeting, something that AI cannot do. And that's all Councilor Lucas has to say.
Councilor Maliki.
Oh, first of all, I think calling up the committee chair and saying who said that is relying on somebody's memory and could very well lead to misattribution. Two thoughts. I've been on or used, it's been a while, but that otter transcription thing, and I thought that was capable of distinguishing between voices if it knows whose voice, like at the beginning of a meeting, who's identified. So I don't know if our AI is better than maybe we think. And also, I believe at a lot of meetings, the transcription is on, the closed captioning, and I don't know if there's a way to include that in when the recording is posted, because that's a lot more efficient a way if you want to find a point in a meeting rather than trying to scroll through the time, the progress bar or whatever you call it on the recording and guessing, do I stop here at 20 minutes or do I go on to 30 minutes or whatever? If you can scan the transcript, you can look for the topic to come up and see it that way. So that would be an alternate way to make it easier to find the discussion on a certain topic. So, because I'm big on attribution, as I've said in past terms.
Good point. I have Councilors Roach, Albright, and followed by Grossman.
So I just want to make, on the Otter AI, Councilor Maliki, I think that what they do is it picks it up based on what the source of the call is. And so if multiple people are on the same microphone, so in a committee room or the city council, it's all attributed to whatever identity is signed into the call. So for instance, in the last 2 minutes, you and I would be recognized as coming from the same source. Part of the problem with the shift from the audio tapes, which the council and the Board of Aldermen used to do, to YouTube, is that audio is now not recorded separately and posted, as far as I know. And part of the problem with YouTube is you frequently have to have it open in order to listen to it. So one of the things that I'd like to look into is having a separate audio cut of the video, and we have to figure out how to do that so that you can listen to it separately. The transcript, as far as I know, you can't pull out. You can get it while you're watching YouTube, but you can't pull it out. So there's some things we can look into, I think, which will make this a little bit easier. I love the idea of searching. I mean, it's much easier to search the transcript to find things than it is to listen. But there's some work that we need to do that. And then this is only going to get worse. The problem is connecting the docket item to the various pieces that make up the docket item, including other supporting materials, then the committee agendas, then the committee video, then the committee reports is already kind of manual and time consuming. If anybody wants to know my effort to do that for land use, you can go to my webpage. But that is going to be one of those things that's going to take a hit with a smaller staff. So maybe this is something we can talk about offline, Mr. Willison. But that piece of transparency, I'm imagining, is going to get worse before it gets better. Thank you.
Fair point. I've got Councillor Albright, then Grossman, then Charm.
So two things. The first has to do with the way it used to be done. I do remember that people used to complain, not that they were misquoted, but that they were mischaracterized by staff when they wrote the reports. I didn't mean that, or that's not what I intended to say. So I think that was the problem back in the day when we used to say Councillor Albright said so-and-so, that the staff was mischaracterizing according to the councillor. So that happened quite frequently. The other thing is, and I don't know, maybe folks are not aware, but we are looking for a new docket tracking system. And the two systems that are in the running both allow us to bookmark the video so that with a, a click of something, you will have the portion of the video that goes with that docket item in the meeting will be easily and readily available to watch. So you don't have to watch the whole thing to find that little piece that you want to listen to. It'll be bookmarked for you. And that will make a huge difference, so that it won't matter whether you're recognized as to what you said, because you can go click something and it will take you right to the part of the video where that docket item was discussed. So I think that will happen sometime in the near future, in the next 6 months, let's say. Thank you.
All set. Great. Thank you. Councillor Grossman, followed by Councillors Charm, then Kelly.
Thank you. So I think the technology that Councillor Albright just alluded to is a great answer to all of this, because I, in short, agree with Councillor Baker. I think he put it exactly right. And you pointed out right at the beginning that we're all videoed. And my big concern about this is always context, particularly as someone who now has been responsible over a number of years for having my name, this report is submitted by me. I don't love the idea of having to capture the mood, tone, and context of an individual counselor's comment. And I think I would just also add on top of it, particularly in this time of transition with so many new members of our staff coming in, there's definitely a learning curve and a fair amount of variability in report writing, experience and growth, and just sort of out of the gate, love or talent for writing. And as a chair, that can also be, like, from a timing perspective, really tricky. So I guess what I would say is, if we were to go in the direction of starting to quote people, my request then to the clerk's office would be that I would really like my draft a lot sooner, because what often happens is I'll receive it and then, I've got a full day of commitments and the report needs to be published by 3:30, and I can't sit down and look at it till 3:27. So there just needs to be a broader amount of time if we're really going to be expected to attempt to capture that accurately.
Thank you for that. Councillor Charm, then Kelly.
I think the technology can help in many ways. I agree with Councillor Maliki. I use the paid versions of Otter AI in my work. You can have it distinguish voices, they're all in the same room or all on one line. It can discern that there are speaker 2, speaker 3, speaker 4. It is not perfect, and it takes a lot of time to clean up those transcripts if you are really relying on the transcripts. I think maybe one compromise might be to have the meeting notes offer timestamps in the videos of when certain docket items were addressed so that they're easy to find in the video. I also do like the idea of having the automated transcript sort of below the YouTube video so that you can then be able to, do a Control F and like find a keyword and be able to, click on it and it takes you to that spot in the video. If we were to do things like that, and maybe also in the summaries, you could say, on this portion, maybe you could say these counselors offered, comments you could, but without actually, quoting or attributing, but just so people have a sense of who is contributing on what. And then if they want to, they can go in and more easily find the section of the video, because I agree with you, it's there. And if people were to take a second to, go over and try to find it, but if you are trying to scroll and then wait and, figure out how long different items took, that can sometimes take a lot longer to be able to find that part. So that would be my sort of compromise solution. Like, let's use technology to be able to offer sort of the timestamp chapters of what the videos are, have the rough transcript, offer the disclaimer of like, this is not, fully vetted transcriptions, and then you have people use that to be able to find the spot that they want to be able to.
Great, thank you. I've got Councilors Kelly, Getz, and then Roach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Councilor Baker said what I was thinking originally, but I'm going to restate it because to me it's an important part of this conversation. That the committee reports or meeting notes, as he said, are not transcripts. They've never been called transcripts. They are summaries. They are the essence of what was said. And as Councilor Albright, who's been a councilor a lot longer than I have, said, we used to do it this way, which is never a good argument in my book. Like, that's the way we used to do it is not convincing. However, it's not just counselors who are looking for this information, as many of us have been hearing at office hours and talking to constituents. It's residents who would like to see who said what. And not everyone is capable or willing to do the scroll and click thing and to try and find an audio recording of it. I think there's a lot to be said for having a written record of a committee report, which is basically a summary of notes saying who said what. So I'm on that side of these things. Not everybody wants to click on other stuff to get to what they're looking for. The very few people who want to do that know how to do that. But again, as some of us have been hearing from constituents, it's hard for them to understand what the attestation was of some of the comments. So I would like it if we could figure out a way to get back to having committee reports attribute the comments to the people who made them. Thank you.
Councilor Getz.
Yes, I'm using it. Thank you. I actually have been using for quite a while the looking at the planning department's committee meetings, and they actually set up the Zoom so that the audio transcript is running with the meeting and it has smart chapters. And they are incredibly beneficial in terms of being able to find specifically where in the video there is a specific topic that's being discussed, and it follows the agenda. So I've, for quite a while, I've been advocating that we do this, just because I think even, just as a resource for both the public as well as for, the city council, it is really beneficial to not spend, in the meeting you know where to go, but if you don't attend the meeting, then you have a really hard time being able to find, you don't want to spend 5 minutes trying to find where specifically in the tape what you're interested in listening to, where it's located. So I just think that we already have a certain amount of technology that's in place right now that we can use, and I would like to suggest that, and I've been suggesting for a long time that we use this system and we see whether or not it works for us. But I do agree with Councilor Baker that in fact, there's a higher level that needs to be understood in terms of the meeting summation. But I also feel as if there is benefit in terms of having an audio transcript that will help anyone who's looking for a specific topic to be able to find it. So I think there's a categorization of like how we end up, working with our meeting content.
Councilor Roach, followed by Councilors Leary, then Baker.
I just want to make the quick point that we, the council, are no longer the owners of our transcript and our video, because now it's new TV. And so the idea of putting chapters in the description is a fairly easy technical manual process, and putting it in. The problem is we don't have access to to be able to edit the description. And so maybe that's something we want to talk to New TV about, is, how do we work with them? For instance, in the land use, identifying the docket items would be very simple to do, but they're not showing up in the description because New TV isn't doing it.
Thank you. Councilor Leary, Baker, and then Albright.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm very cognizant of many of our residents in Newton are older. And I think some of them aren't as savvy on the computer. I think it would be really great to make things easier to find on the city's webpage. Sometimes I can't find something that I'm looking for.
Sometimes.
Might take a little time. And I think that's one way to be more transparent. And we talked about this. I know this isn't new, but I'm just going to bring it up as a bit of a reminder that I still think that's important to commit to in terms of just negotiating that the webpage. I like just Councilor Charm's comment about the timestamps. I thought that was really helpful, and that would save people a lot of time. I also like the idea about the planning board discussion. That will just be another thing for me to watch, I guess. And we also talked about a city councilor newsletter. Does anyone remember that? We had talked about that. It never really got off the ground, but it might be something we want to consider in terms of is it worth the effort? Can we expand the leadership? I mean, I'm just thinking of our prior mayor's newsletter and our current mayor's newsletter. Those are very well received. So I'm just throwing that out as something to talk about or think about if we want to go ahead and do that. And also, is everyone familiar with the electronic posting board? Because it took me like a couple of years before I even knew what that was. The electronic posting board, Newton, it lists all the meetings in the order on the calendar. So every single meeting, well, I'm not sure if it's every single meeting, but like the Sustainable Materials Management, all those non-city council meetings are there too. And that's a good way to sort of look ahead, because the Friday packet only shows you, a limited, you don't really know that much ahead of what's going to happen. You really have to look for it. When is the meeting going to be scheduled? Sometimes it's nice to have more than 2 days notice if you're looking at the Friday's packet, if it's a land use meeting on a Tuesday. Well, actually, you have the weekend too. But so those are just a couple of my things, and maybe consider large print.
There are definitely days, right?
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Councilor Baker, followed by Albright. Anyone else on this topic? Because I've got one other element that I wanted to kind of bring to the table for us to kick around.
So let me say that to the extent the technology is available and can be made clarified to the public about how it's used, because again, there may be some benefit in having a little bit of a note to say if you want to find this, do that, or whatever it is. But again, this is a chairs meeting, and I just have to raise the perspective or associate myself with the comments Councilor Grossman. The, the chair's job is to work to try and build the agenda and get the backup and all that material together and work with the clerk's office to do that. Then the clerk works with the chairs to get the reports done in a timely way. And we know that the time of the staff is not infinitely elastic. And we have matters like recodification, which are still outstanding because we need time from the staff to finish that task. So every time we talk about doing something to make things easier for some individual who is, with good cause, wants to find something without going a little deeper, we're adding time and burden to the people who have to put the whole process together. So I just want to be very cautious about doing that. And that's why I'm a fan of the current system, not just because we've done it that way, but because I think it's the most efficient way of getting a lot of information out front, perhaps amplified by some of the technological suggestions that have been made.
Great, thank you. Councillor Albright.
Thanks. I want to understand, perhaps as we are looking for this new system, what some of the folks in this room have been saying about what information you want bookmarked and time-stamped. So I know Councilor Roach, Councilor Getz, but I don't know who else. Did I miss anybody? Councilor Maliki? I'm not sure.
But if there,
or maybe Councilor
I
Hume.
think the way to go about it is if you've got particular things you would like to see kind of on a, you know, it's not dropping a pin, but it's basically saying as you're scrubbing through, you know, a meeting recording, if you want certain things called out,
yeah,
please let Councilor Albright know because she's working with us on the docket tracking system.
That would be good if you can do that this week. Thanks.
Of course. Councilor Silber.
I just wanted to put this briefly in context. So say we have about 18 meetings of committees in full city council. People talk about 100 words per minute, 2-hour meeting, 60 minutes. It's roughly 860 pages of dialogue generated per month. So I'm not sure that we have a transparency problem.
Just rough numbers, right? Just backing
I'm
up
just,
and stuff?
yeah, just rough numbers. Sometimes we talk longer and, you know, say more interesting things. And that's completely without context, as we know, right? Because it's not, you know, Jacob Silber said honestly. I mean, there's no, you know. So we're generating a huge, huge amount of material. And I think for me, the thing that I don't really understand, and I read, you know, parts of the transparency report is what people are looking for they can't find, or they don't want to spend the time to find it, which is totally understandable considering how much we're generating in terms of content, or they need somebody to help guide them to find what they want to find. And I guess I'm still not completely clear on what the problem is we're trying to solve. I mean, I understand the problem we're trying to solve here in this room for accessing content. I don't really understand the problem we're trying to solve for residents.
Other than at the highest level, I agree. I'm not exactly sure how people are searching and exactly what for. I think we all have anecdotal evidence of it, but I think we probably, before we commit to anything significant and sign our clerks up for more work, as Councilor Baker brought up, we need to understand that as a, you know, so we're going down the right road. One other thing that has been brought to my attention, and I was kind of surprised to hear this, but in land use, the topic has come up. When we receive letters from the public about an item, and I'm not saying it's only land use, this is where it came up, and I think it's fair to say that for the most part, this is where we get the most written correspondence about what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and what people expect us to do next. Those letters in order to become part of a public record, takes effort, again, by the clerk's office, to make sure that it's the right word, sanitized, or ready for public sharing, because there are certain things we redact, right? And I think it's interesting to me, because as of right now, if somebody wanted to get that information, it's actually become a public records request. And I recall, and other folks here who have been here longer and who have better memories than I seem to recall that for a while there, they were just available on the website in folders or attachments. I can't remember all the specifics, but I think that that's an element of transparency that ultimately, when the clerk's office is back to full staff, I think it's worth bringing up this topic again to look at that, because I do believe that written correspondence, just like anyone who comes in to testify or comment on a project, is a matter of public record. It shouldn't have to be that way. And just as a reminder for everyone here, that information is available. It's just for right now, it's going to be more of a process than it once was, and perhaps once might be again. Councilor Char.
Just a clarifying question on that. Was that behavior shifted away from putting them up on the public site or in public folders because of redaction concerns? Or was it shifted because of City Hall bandwidth? Like, do we know why the policy changed? Or when?
I'm just going to stand here and say I personally don't know. There's one person in the clerk's office who will be here until the 10th who might know, and we can certainly follow up on that. I think that's a great question. I'd like to understand why myself. I wouldn't be surprised if it went back to workload, although Councilor Albright has her hand in the air.
Back when we were doing the VCOD, Jacqueline, who used to work in our office, did put all of the letters into folders, and everybody could read all of them. It might be worth asking Jacqueline, who's been around a little while longer, when did the policy change? She may be able to know that.
Great point. Thank you for that. We'll chase that down. All right, I'm going to change gears for a minute. We can always talk more transparency in a minute. Pretty soon we're going to be jumping into budget season. I know there are at least 7 city councilors here who haven't gone through this before. The good news is going to be, at least in part, that the presentations from the department heads are going to be different this year. They're going to be more centered on what they're focused on in their department. A little bit more focused on their goals, perhaps a couple of challenges. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't seen any of these reports yet. The full information, the line item detail for every single budget item in the city is still going to be available to us, but the presentations are going to be a little bit, I'm going to use the word tighter, perhaps more succinct, hopefully a little bit shorter in some cases. And they should be informed by all the questions that we've been collecting and forwarding through our committees to the department heads. One of the requests that we've gotten from the administration that I'm passing along is, as you go through these meetings, right, and you're meeting with a particular department, the request, well, it's twofold, really. Number one, realize that some of the department heads who will be presenting to us have never done this before. Some of them are actually nervous in front of a rolling camera. So take it easy on them when you kind of detect that that might be going on. Okay, maybe it's not a rolling camera, it's a video camera. I'm not sure what I'm not sure which part of what I just said is funky, but as we're going through this, the other part of the ask is, let's try and keep our questions focused on the budget. It's probably not the best time to ask a department head what it is they really do here. That's just me trying to be funny, I'm feeling, because nobody even cracked a grin on that one. But there you go. Like, when you're going through these meetings, please keep it to the budget. And if you have really in-depth questions, certainly, put the question forward. But if the answer is going to be incredibly long and there's a dialogue required, just please, let's be cognizant of everyone's time here. Does that make sense? All right, there we go. All right, we're going to start over here. Councilor Grossman.
Thank you. And I've definitely done some thinking and talking about ways we can make the budget more productive as well. I think what I would just say is a little tough about, make sure the topics are about the budget is that obviously everything they're spending money on is wrapped up in this budget. And when we take up these items in committee, we're also simultaneously putting the CIP before us. So essentially any project that that department oversees that is listed there and has always been treated as fair game. And I've sort of gone back and forth because, I mean, as you know, I've had my own struggles with the utility of the budget process. And, in some ways, we've sort of treated it in the past almost like an annual free-for-all of, all topics within that department, which I think it's not intended to do. But I do think that if we're talking about what does your department spend money on, then anything that is within the realm of that question to me feels fair. And I guess the other thing I would say is in the various conversations that I've been having with our council president, with the mayor, I've kept coming back to this idea of trying to get to the core question of what would you do if you had $100,000 extra in your budget? What would you do if you had to reduce your budget by $100,000? I mean, I am increasingly interested in using this time to try to figure out what are the sort of stresses in each department. If we budgeted a different way, if we prioritize this one department over a different department, what would that mean for them? What are we not doing because we're not giving them the additional money? And, one other thing that I hope will be broadly conveyed, I've had assurance from the mayor that it will, is that department heads should feel free to speak freely. I think sometimes it's interesting that you pointed out that you think a lot of the nerves come from the camera. I think that's fair. I also think a lot of the nerves come from department heads never really are 100% sure how they're going to be treated when they walk into a council meeting and whether they're going to be sort of, asked really hard things that they haven't prepared for, or, if it's going to be warm, softballs, warm and, friendly. So I guess what I would say is I would encourage us all, even if questions are hard, to try to be warm and friendly and work in the spirit of adults working together to solve problems. And secondly, to try to really think about how we can, like, what we can do to help support this department in getting to what we all want them, to be able to do. And part of that is feeling like they can speak freely about the things that maybe they would have really liked to see funded, but the powers that be in the administration said there's not money for that, and be able to be really candid about that, and feel like that's a safe thing to discuss, because without that, there's no point, in my opinion.
I saw other hands over here too. Councilor Kelly, and then Councilor Grossberg.
Again, thank you, Mr. President. So I understand, I think as many of us have heard, that the budget reports and even the documents will be more overall, briefer, more concise this year. I would just like to be assured that the budget documents and the CIP documents that we receive have all of the detail and all of the numbers at every budget line item, even though they won't be talking about it. We will still have that information in writing before us. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand the goal of becoming more efficient with the budget season, but I have to say this will be my 9th budget season, and I find meeting the department heads and hearing and learning more about their departments has been so fruitful, and I love that part of the budget meetings, is that I get to learn more about how city works and operates, and not just about their budget. So I get to meet department heads that I've never met. I get to learn what their priorities are, what their goals are. So I want us to feel free to do that and ask those type of questions too.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. I think we will be presented with, I'm understanding. Again, I haven't seen one of these, but the conversation that's been shared with myself, Vice President Kalis, and others has been, these presentations are going to be much more focused on what they're doing, what their priorities are, in some cases, how we can help them, right? Kind of set a tone for us in terms of what we can expect from particular departments. So I agree 100%. I do think that there have been instances, and I think all of us who've been through the process probably have bumped into this once or twice. Sometimes we tend to stray off into areas that all important questions and great conversation, but maybe best held at a different time. And again, it's not about their priorities. It's not about their goals. It's not about not asking questions to get to know what they're doing in their department. That's exactly what these budget meetings are for. And I think we'll all know it when we bump into it, like we'll know it when we see it. We're going to get into some rabbit holes, and let's just be cognizant of, hey, why don't we pull back here a little bit? That's really all I'm trying to say. So I've got Councilors Getz, Baker, and then Albright. No, I don't have Councilor Getz, but I do have Councilor Baker.
So I think to pick up on what the Chair of Finance indicated, it's important to remember the budget process function. We have, it seems to me, two different roles. One is we either accept the mayor's budget and we could do nothing and it becomes the budget for the city by operation of law, right? We could just not discuss it, not do anything. And by golly, his budget will become our budget and the city's budget, and it'll become the basis of the tax rate. So the question is, we have two opportunities, it seems to me. One is, if we think that there's something that shouldn't be spent, we can always say that's an expenditure that shouldn't be made, and move a cut. In my 42 years of experience of budgets, I've rarely seen that happen. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's rare. I think Councilor Albright would back me up on that from her experience. The other opportunity, I think, is to say, we know that there's not enough money to go around. The question is, what is needed, and raise questions for the administration to consider potential increases. And we do that by resolution because we have no authority to change the number except by reducing it. We can't increase it in any line item. So I think that if the conversation is shaped, first, is this a budget that I can feel comfortable asking the public to support with its tax dollars? Second, are there allocations within the budget that might be rethought if there was more information available? That's a reasonable question, but the department heads are under a difficult situation because they basically get given a number after they've made their case and said, well, this is what we can give you. And now they're coming in and saying, well, maybe I'd like a little more. Now, the school department did that last year, as you may remember, but that's a rare event. So I think the point of my remarks is just to suggest that as we ask questions, we try and think about, is there something where something could be done differently that we think has a financial impact that the mayor, as in form of a resolution, might be responsive to. But that's really a very limited window, it seems to me, of opportunity, but it's one worth taking.
Well put. Thank you. Councilor Albright?
I just want to say that I find it ironic that the counselor who was the hardest on the department heads is now the mayor. So
That's not lost on him, yes.
The fact that the mayor is asking us to be kind to the department heads is very ironic to me. I can't help it. I find that, I think that we, by and large, over these last number of years, we've been pretty nice to the department heads. We've asked questions, we've supported them. So I'm not worried about how we're going to be with department heads. I think we have a pretty good track record. Thanks.
I've been known to ask a few pointed questions as well. And it's, again, I think that the message, and I think Councilor Grossman said it very well, we're trying to be a little bit warm and fuzzy as we're, especially with presenters who haven't done this before. That's really, I believe, the genesis of the comment that was made to us. So let's just keep that in mind. I don't want to beat this one any further than we already have, but got a question online. Was that Councilor Mickley? Is that?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just want to echo comments made by Councilor Bixby when this topic first came up a few months ago. I mean, our job is just to hold everyone accountable for ensuring that the budget is good for all residents. So obviously we should do that with politeness, kindness, but we should ask good questions and do our job fully. And I think it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Well said. All right, rolling right along. I'm sorry. Sorry, my fault.
Mr. President, I was just raising my hand to say that we're getting late and there's other items on the agenda. I was wondering if we were going to get to them, that's all.
Well, I was planning on being here all night. No, okay, so I'm being rushed along. Here we go. Just kidding. Although not really, I guess. I just want to make a couple of quick comments about council rules and best practices. For those of you who may have missed it in programs and services, the process of looking at council rules has begun. I've seen, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen ideas, thoughts that some of you have brought to the table to be discussed as part of council rules. And I believe that if there are any other requests for review or to understand how some of these rules work, I think Councilor Baker is in the catbird seat on those. So if there are any comments, do they come to you for now?
Well, certainly to the clerk, Mr. Starkey, and as well as me, but we're trying to get the agenda put together for our first meeting, which is a week from Wednesday, before the Programs and Services meeting. So I would like to make that time as efficient as possible. So I would be grateful if anyone has rules, issues that you haven't already submitted to the clerk, that if you could get them done by perhaps Wednesday, it would be useful. Close the business, then we give him 2 days to make sure that we've got the agenda put together so that it will make sense for everybody and we can do it as efficiently as we can given the nature of the week.
Great, thank you, sir. And just to kind of wrap up what I wanted to say on the idea of best practices, and this comes to me from, or comes to us all from the clerk's office, and it has to do with second call items. Currently, our rules state that you can request an item to be put on second call up to 15 minutes before the council meeting. Okay, but let's not do that to each other or to the clerk's office. If you have something you want to put on second call, please just do it as early as you can so that the chair can be prepared to talk to said item and that your fellow counselors have the ability to prepare for it. Now, I'm not saying it has to be done that way, but if you know on Friday afternoon, oh, that's got to go on second call because I want us to talk about that particular item, please put it on second call on Friday afternoon. I think that's courteous to not only everybody in this room, but to the clerk's office as well, and in particular, the chair of the committee that item came out of, so that they can be prepared to talk to the item. One other thing I want to add to that, and then I'll get right to Councilor Grossman, is I'm going to ask that when you put something on second call, do so using citycouncil@newtonma.gov. 2 reasons. Number one, the chair will get it, the clerk's office will get it, and probably everybody who's listening to me will get it, so that they'll know it's on second call. It's not a requirement. I'm just asking for, I think the clerk said something, Mr. Willison said something really impactful to me when I brought this up, is our best conversations are ones that we prepare for, not that catch us off guard. With that said, Councilor Grossman, you had your hand up.
I had a clarifying question. The rules say up to 15 minutes before the meeting?
Actually, it says that, and then there's yet a whole other paragraph that says, and I did not catch this before, during first call, we can actually put an item on second call at that time.
No, right, that was my expectation.
It says both, so I think that'll be one of the things that we have to clarify during the rules. Like, it might be okay that both of those can coexist, but in my mind, it's a little odd.
In my mind, it was kosher to put something on second call up and until first call is closed.
And then,
and that would be the practice that I would like to see continue. We can certainly debate that at a later time, but I think sometimes we realize something or think about something that we didn't think about before, and I would always rather have an opportunity to talk about it than not. So that 15-minute rule surprised me. Thank you.
Yeah, the fact that both of them are in there kind of surprised me as well. And I do think, and I want to be really crystal clear on this, when you know there's something you want to put on second call, please do it. Don't wait until 15 minutes ahead of the meeting. If it happens to happen 20 minutes before, 15 minutes before the meeting, oh, I really wanted to talk, like, I didn't think that, I thought that item was held, and then make the call. We all understand that. But when we can, let's get out ahead of things whenever we can. Councilor Baker.
Just remind everyone, I'm sure you know this, that if you put it on second call, you can always take it off. And after a conversation with the chair or anyone else, which has occurred recently, and I just think it's important to recognize that it's not a one-way street.
Well put. Okay, the last items that I had on my list were actually both to do with Zoom. We've been, a few of our committee meetings have had the misfortune of being Zoom bombed again. As I think we've done twice already, the question is back in front of us. I'm bringing it up. I'm curious what everyone here thinks and would like to do. Councilor Baker knows where I'm going with this. The question is, at least the first question, how do we collectively feel about holding our online meetings as meetings or webinars? Is everybody here kind of clear on the difference between the two? First, start there. No? Okay, so meetings are basically, everyone can see everyone else in the meeting. You can see the list of participants, you can see who's on screen, not dissimilar to what you see here, the folks that are online, right? You can see them in a meeting. In a webinar format, and I'm generalizing here, we can go into much more detail if we need to, but a webinar format is much more controlled. it all but, I think it's fair to say, all but eliminates the possibility of Zoom bombing, because there's only one screen at a time that people can see, and that is the speaker. Now, it's possible to promote people to be a panelist and allow them to share their video, share their screen, and to speak. But then once they're done speaking, they're back into what I'll call the sidebar. And in the past, for the benefit of the folks who haven't had this debate with the council before, it's come down to, I think anyway, do we want to have our Zoom-based or our kind of, the online portion of our meetings be more community-based? In other words, everyone can kind of see who's there. In a webinar, you can't. But in a meeting, you can. But it does open the door to Zoom bombing. So I've seen a few hands. I'm going to start with Councilor Baker. Then I'll go to, I think the next hand I saw was Councilor Leary, Albright, and then Maliki.
So I'm in the unfortunate position of having chaired a meeting where we invited officials from the town of Brookline, including the town administrator, to have that meeting Zoom bombed with a very unpleasant situation. And I've also seen it happen this term in the traffic council. For my way of thinking, I am not a fan of using Zoom. I'm prepared to move my committee to the extent I can to the webinar format, because I think the public interest in having people hear and see what is said, but not hear and see what they should not see, is really much more important than knowing who else is on the call. So I'm not a fan of Zoom. I think that the difficulties it poses for the clerk's office to try and monitor who's on the call and how to let them in and all of that really distracts from their ability to maintain the record and keep track of what's going on. So if it's within my power as a chair, I'm going to go to a webinar format.
All right, I saw hands. I'm going to do my best to get them in order. I've got everybody. I'll add you to the list as well, Councilor Kelly, but I've got Councilor Baker. We just heard from Councilor Kalis, Leary, Albright, Maliki, Lucas, and Kelly. Did I get everybody? Okay, great. So let's go to Councilor Kalis, then Leary, right?
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I really think the meeting format is the way to go. I do think it's very important for the community to know who's there. I feel like it's a lot more of a community effort and feel, and people feel more welcome when you're in the webinar format. It's very restrictive, and I think people feel shut out. And I'm willing to live with the Zoom bombing, as unpleasant as they are, but I think that's the meeting is the way to go. It's a real public square type format. I don't think it takes away from what the clerks do. Yes, they have to be a little bit more on their toes, but the occurrences have diminished. If they increase to a point where it's unlivable, then yeah, I would consider it. But right now, I just feel the meeting format is more important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors Leary, Albright, Maliki, Kelly, then Lucas.
Thank you very much. So the last comment from my colleague from Ward 8, I completely agree with. I think from my last experience with the webinar, it was very unpopular with the public, and we ended up switching back. It's the difference between a one-way view and an interactive, collaborative, community-based meeting. It's night and day. I would not want to go back to that. And what I think we should first do is make sure that the city clerks are adept at security and intercepting any kind of Zoom bombing going on. And there were a number of clerks that got very good at that. Some of them are no longer clerks, but they still work in the mayor's office. So I was wondering if we could consider a training if that is deemed necessary, but I really would only go back to webinars as an absolute last resort.
Thank you. Councillor Albright.
So I'm going to agree with Councillor Baker. As I did the last time we had this conversation. You know, for a while we had no Zoom bombings, and suddenly it's picking up again. So I don't know what that's all about, but we're having more of them than we used to have. Just because you can see a list of names or you can see other people's faces doesn't make it interactive or collaborative. If you want to know who's at the meeting, I bet we could find a way to have people sign in and make their list of names available to everybody. It's just so embarrassing. I would agree 100%. It's just so embarrassing to have all of us and department heads and guests, and even to have the public, we have to put up with the Zoom bombing. I think there's a way we can make it clear who else is at the meeting besides us without having to put up with the Zoom bombing. So I'm 100% in agreement with Councillor Baker.
Councillor Maliki.
Okay, I'm 100% in agreement with Councilors Kalis and Leary. I think Zoom came into existence as an alternative to a public meeting here in the chamber or in a room where people can see each other and see who's there, even if they're not talking to each other during the meeting. Obviously, they know who's interested in an issue, how big the crowd was, what the sense of the room was. I think reversing back to webinar, which I agree was very unpopular. I hate it. Everyone I hear from hates it. It's going in the exact opposite direction of what we're supposed to be doing in terms of transparency and bringing the public in. We're kind of hiding who's attending meetings. We're putting everybody in their own little silo where all they can see is the speaker and the panelists. Completely opposed to what the League of Women Voters is asking us to do. You know, I've been on, and by the way, Zoom is both things. So it's not Zoom or webinar, it's meeting or webinar, as you said. But, you know, I think when one of those, you know, the guy with the whatever showed up on the screen a while back when I was watching at home, I just like hung something over my screen. People don't have to watch it. They can shut their computer screen down and it'll shut the audio off. That is a small price to pay, I think, for keeping the public engaged. So, thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the responsibility, as Councillor Baker did, of chairing one of the 2 meetings that were Zoom bombed in the past month, and it was for sure an extremely unpleasant experience. But I think for better access, the Zoom meeting format is far preferable for me, for letting members of the public be part of things and to see who else is there and to be able to speak freely. Like, at least with land use, most of our meetings are public hearings, and they can speak that way without having to go through a much more, I don't know, troublesome process of asking to speak. So in this case, I agree with Councilors Kalis, Leary, and Maliki. I think that for best access, versus the risk of minimal exposure, I'll say, so each one maybe lasts 30 seconds and as inappropriate and disgusting as they can be. So far, also, the staff is pretty good at shutting them down, figuring out who they are and ending it. I would take that risk for the benefit of greater participation and awareness. And I assume that maybe we'll leave it up to chair discretion. I have no complaint that Councillor Baker would like to chair his meetings in a webinar format. I would not like to do that. I would like to be able to keep it open, more open on a Zoom format. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Lucas, followed by Councillor Mickley.
Thank you. Yeah, I prefer the meeting format. And this is, I serve on traffic council, and I think twice this year already we've been Zoom bombed, and I just want to give a shout out to the new assistant clerk of the council, Lisa Pennell, who I think last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we had traffic council, within seconds was, you know, kicked that person out of the Zoom meeting. So I don't know who said it before, but you know, making sure the committee clerks are properly trained to identify the Zoom account and to remove them. That was Councilor Leary. Um, so that they can properly or quickly remove those individuals who are Zoom bombing. But the Zoom meeting or the meeting format, I believe, is the way to go.
Councilor Mickley, followed by Councilor Krinsman.
I support the meeting format for all the reasons said. Thank you.
Here it is. Councilor Krinsman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to be as brief as Councilor Mickley, but I'll be brief. I agree with a lot of the things that have been said. I think when it comes to this council, we have tried to weigh the benefits of, a meeting as open as it can be with the drawbacks of Zoom bombing and things like that. I think what we previously decided was sort of discretion of the chair, but we implemented some of the meeting controls, such as the waiting room, to make sure that if someone does Zoom bomb, you sort of identify them if they try to get back in. The ability to kick people out. I think chairs, all co-hosts now, I think, have those abilities, but it's usually at least the chairs, if not in addition to the clerks and other counselors at the meeting. So there's broad latitude to kick folks out. I want to remind people that we don't necessarily know everyone who's in the meeting. We know anyone who wants to be known that they're in the meeting, okay? Catherine Klein wants us to know that Catherine Klein is in the meeting, but Catherine Klein could also identify as Mickey Mouse when Catherine Klein logs into the Zoom meeting, and we would allow Mickey Mouse to be in the meeting, and that would be fine. We are open to the public. We know who's in the meeting as long as they want us to know that they're in the meeting, and that's fine. I align with the folks who have said that I think the benefits will outweigh the detriments to having the meeting format. I don't think we need to go to the webinar yet. I'm comfortable with that. I certainly, reserve the right to change my mind if it gets progressively worse, but I think we have a pretty good system in place that kicks people out pretty quickly, and I think the benefits to all for being able to access the meeting, be identified in the meeting, outweigh that temporary inconvenience of a Zoom bomb, especially with the controls we have in place. Thank you.
All right, anyone? Oh, Councilor Baker.
Let me just make one other point. This is, I think, important to recognize that the purpose of the meeting is for us to conduct our business as a city council committee, and with in participation of those that the chair elects to bring in. If a public hearing is a different story, but the importance of this is to get our work done. It is not necessarily to have other people see who else attends. And we have meetings in person as well as online. And again, I think that the important part is to get the work done and get it done in a way that's not disruptive, and to have a record that is not, frankly, polluted by the context of what we've seen recently. So if it's, as I say, I intend to go to the webinar format for the ZAP meetings because I think it functions better for that purpose. But others can do what they want with their committee.
Councilor Roach.
So I think the problem we have is that we've set a precedent, and I hate this expression, but I don't disagree with Councilor Baker. I think that the purpose of the meetings can be served with the webinar format, but that would be going back on what has become a convention, which I think the public relies on, or at least takes value from, which is identifying who else is in the virtual room. So I think we should be mindful not simply of what the definitional purpose of the meeting is, but also the convention that we have created. I personally feel like the benefits outweigh the problems. I would also suggest that we introduce something at the beginning of the meeting where the chair can say, you know, in the event that we get Zoom bombed, we may shut the meeting down. If so, you know, come back in. We won't start anything for at least 5 minutes so you have some time. And that way people know ahead of time if we have to just shut it down that they can get back in. And I had one other thing to say, but as usual, I've forgotten. Thank you.
Let me know if it comes back to you. Councilor Silver, followed by Councilor Albright.
Just a process question, but has IT created a template with the sort of optimal configuration that can be used for all meetings? Because, I mean, just Googling really quickly, it seems like there's a couple of edge cases, but pretty much everything can be addressed in the meeting format, with the exception of perhaps letting someone speak. And since we require people to, usually if they're going to speak, state their name and address, we could have those people pre-register, and then that kind of closes the loop for almost everything, I think.
Councilor, the President's asked me to weigh in. Yes, we're following all the guidelines that IT has given us on how to set up the meetings. Our staff is trained on how to kick people out of these meetings quickly, or if we're unable to do that quickly, to shut down the meeting and reboot it. But it's difficult. We've reached out to most of the other clerks in the area, and they have similar problems. We've not been able to, no one's been able to identify a better product than this. It's just something that we have to live with to a certain extent, to the extent this is the format you want to follow, which is a subject that our office is relatively ambivalent on. We're prepared to meet the challenge of it happening, hopefully within 5 or 10 seconds. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer.
And then the only other comment I'll make to your question is what happened, at least in ZAP, what was that, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now? The challenge is now that people are putting videos as their background. And if they're in kind of the, you know, what I call the Brady Bunch squares, everybody sees it. And then you have to boot that person out. They might be muted, but you see the video.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can disable allowing participants to start video too. I mean, I think we should just say, like, this is the way it's going to be, and if you want to participate with video, register beforehand.
Well, I believe that the challenge is it's set as their background. So what we would be saying is, and I believe, if I recall correctly when we asked about this, and I might be out on over my skis on this one, if you turn off backgrounds, you turn them off for everyone in the meeting, I think is what I remember hearing, but it's worth chasing down. Because that would have at least stopped what we saw in the one meeting that we had in ZAP that I recall.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed in the traffic council meeting was that participants were allowed to screen share. And I actually turned it off when we got the gentleman who was, or person who was drawing interesting things. And so that was pretty fast. I mean, so, you know, I think, you know, that helped.
Right. That probably shouldn't happen at all, the screen share part. Councilor Albright, right?
I don't know if we're going to do a vote or not decide or have more discussion at another time, but I'm wondering if the clerk's office could just keep track over the next, let's say, month of how many members of the public come into our meetings. Lately, it's been very small numbers, 6, 8. So I mean, and maybe we pick the meetings that we want more people to be part of, and those meetings are meetings, and some meetings are webinars. But if we could get some data from the clerk's office about how many people are actually coming in, that might be useful.
Yeah, I sense there was a question in the middle of that statement. I'm not intending to take a vote per se on it, because I think I'm compelled by what Councilor Baker is saying, even if I personally prefer, like, in my mind, whether we're required to or not, I believe that an online forum should be an extension of being in this room. Therefore, I prefer the meeting format myself. Strongly prefer it. Do I think that individual chairs can or should be allowed to say, look, I want to go to a webinar format? I do. I'm okay with that. Right? As long as the clerk's office can manage that, and I would assume that would be a fairly simple thing to, oh, this one's going to be a webinar format, this one's going to be a meeting format. I'm perfectly comfortable if individual chairs want to run their meetings that way. I am, however, going to bring up, like, if we start getting a lot of feedback, I reserve the right to, I'm going to keep my thumb on that checker, so to speak. And if it becomes, if the webinar format is universally hated by people outside of this room, i.e. our residents, our constituents who we're here to help, we can have that conversation.
Could we also ask the clerk's office to find out if there's a way for people to let us know who is watching in a webinar format, so that the participants, there's a participants list that gets created and is shared publicly, so that, I mean, it's if we have their names, isn't that enough? Do we have to have their box as well? So
we can look into that.
There's stuff to think about here.
Councilor Roach, followed by Councilor Domovid.
You've reminded me what I forgot. I think that we should not be leaving it entirely to chair discretion, and we should have some guidelines that apply consistently across all meetings. So it doesn't mean all meetings are all webinars, but we should have some criteria making that decision and not leave it entirely to chair discretion.
Do you have an example of said guideline?
As I said before, I think meetings are fine. I think the risk is fine, but if we're going to adopt webinars, then the advocates for webinars should identify under what circumstances we would use them, and then we should use them consistently across.
Interesting. Councilor Baker, and then Councilor Domovid.
I respectfully dissent. I think part of the difficulty is, for example, I've used a webinar. You may recall we had a considerable interest from the Chamber of Commerce to participate in one of our meetings, and there was a lot of conversation last term about that. And I set up a special meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee so we could hear from the Chamber of Commerce. But I specifically wanted to hear from the Chamber of Commerce, not from some Zoom bomber. And so we did it in a webinar format deliberately. And I didn't want to have that meeting disrupted by outsiders, where we were specifically designed to hear from other people who were invited. And when we have guests like we did last time, I think it's an embarrassment to the city and very counterproductive for their public interest to invite people from another community as we did and have them see the city of Newton basically acting, or at least some of the residents, in a way that I think is very unproductive. So I would resist a general guideline, and I would like to continue to make the choice when I think it's wise. Doesn't mean I'm always going there, but I've done it before, and I hope to be able to do it again.
Councilor Domovid?
It's just a simple idea to respond to Councilor Albright's suggestion, but if a clerk in a webinar were to just share their screen like this, then everyone would see the list of participants without having to see videos, because we can all see the list of attendees on the right. It would make it trickier for comment, but if there's no comment planned, then you wouldn't need to switch it to a meeting format. That's all.
Yeah, interesting, because we're currently in the webinar. We're in a webinar right now, right? Now, this view that I'm looking at, and this view that we're seeing up here, is that the same thing as a Mary Lee Belleville or Catherine Klein sees? Because if I remember correctly, the other view doesn't have the panel.
It wouldn't have the same. Mary Lee Belleville and Catherine Klein can't see this, but if the clerk were to share this screen,
which I believe, well, we are sharing this screen, I think.
No, we're not. We would see it.
Okay, then we're only projecting it.
So if we were to share this screen, then Mary Lee Belleville and Catherine Klein would see their names there, and any other attendees on the list.
The challenge then if I'm following correctly, and that would mean that in a future ZAP meeting where Councilor Baker to be holding a webinar, that's what people would, they would see the full room view. They would not see whomever else would be speaking. Is that? I
They
don't
could see
remember
who's
how that
speaking
works.
as well, and the list on the right.
Okay. All right. Well, so
Something to test
I'm
out.
open to it. Happy to kind of keep this conversation going, but as of right now, I'm perfectly comfortable if a chair wants to run a meeting in a webinar format until or unless something goes sideways. And what I mean by that in particular, to kind of add a guideline to that, if we really start to get a lot of complaints, I'm not necessarily like compelled to say, okay, we're going to change our minds, but I think it is an ongoing conversation. Councilor Maliki.
Yeah. So the one problem with Councilor Domovit's suggestion is that right now we're looking at a very short list of whatever we're calling them now. But there are times when there's so many names that you have to keep scrolling down to see everybody who's there, and that's like not something I don't think we want to ask the
It'd be pretty hard
who's ever
to have
sharing
the
their
clerk
screen
going
to
back
keep
up and
doing
down.
for the benefit. And I agree with Councilor Roach that I would prefer to have everyone following the meeting format, especially considering that ZAP is one of the high-profile committees that a lot of people, that tends to get better attendance than some of our other committees.
Fair point. And if further on down the road I want to change that direction, I think that's okay, and I'm perfectly comfortable if people want to continue to try and change my mind. But for now, I see no massive harm nor foul. Pun intended, I guess. So the very last thing, and I'm going to look to Councilor Leary because she's the one who put this bug in my ear. There's one more topic on Zoom. I don't know if you want to take the time at this point at 9:16 to go into it? Yes. What do you think? You want to go there? Well, there's one more. There's one further item. Councilor Farrell, go ahead. I didn't mean to be cryptic, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. President, I may be the only Luddite in the room, but is it possible to have a session with somebody about the mechanics of all of this? I sit here going, I don't understand the technology of why we can't block some things and see what's wrong with just having names. We don't need to have pictures. Is there a chance to set up a session?
I'm just going to go right ahead and say yes.
Okay.
And I'll work with Mr. Wilson on that.
Thank you.
And maybe that might be an IT thing, I'm not sure, but we can definitely kind of review some of the best practices in setting up the
I would
Zooms.
like to understand the technological limitations of
Say
some
it
of
ain't
this.
so.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last item I'm going to mention, hopefully this won't spark any further conversation or unnecessary conversation if we all love the idea. But as you can see right now on the screen behind me, we have 3 city councilors in attendance. One of whom has their camera on, 2 don't. The request or the comment has been made, if you are a city councilor in one of your committee meetings participating online, please turn on your camera. If you are, and if I may, I hear you, I gotcha. You'll be first. If you are temporarily indisposed at different times, turn your camera off, then please turn it back on, was the idea. And if it's not your committee meeting, it would be great if you had, instead of just your name there, if you had a photo of yourself, I believe was the original idea. Just so that people have a better sense of which counselors are in the room and what we collectively look like. Counselor Grossman was first.
All right, so in theory, I completely agree with this sentiment. In practice, you know, I was just telling Counselor Krinsman that I was arranging babysitting dates for the month of April because my husband is going to be traveling for business, and I listed 7 nights that I have to hire a babysitter in order to be here. There are some nights that babysitter is not going to show up, or that a kid is going to be sick, and that sitting with my camera on for a concerted amount of time is going to be really difficult. So then, you know, in the pre-Zoom days, I would have had to be absent, and I would just be absent. And one of the benefits of the Zoom era is that I can still participate, albeit it's in a more limited way. And I agree that that is not the ideal. I mean, I think what's sort of become a problem is that it is at times abused, and perhaps we've gotten too lax. So I totally hear where it's coming from. I guess I'm struggling a little bit because I would like to be able to say, yes, I completely agree. You know, if your attention should be on the meeting, you should be fully participating. And I guess sort of my question back is, would we prefer for people to still be able to participate in a limited way where otherwise they would not participate at all? Or is that not productive to the process? And I'm truly asking, not saying I know the complete answer.
My 10 cents, I'm truly answering 100%. This is more of a guide. This is in my estimation, this is not a rule, this is a guideline. If you can be on camera, please be on camera. If you have other circumstances, you're having dinner, tends to happen in my household from time to time. I turn my camera off. No one wants to see me slurp down spaghetti on camera. Like, right? Like, and I know there are a lot of circumstances for all of us, and we all, let's face it, if you're online and it's a community, oh, there's Martha, look at that, see? Hand up on camera, I love it. I don't know what's going on at the Mickley household, but there you have it. Councilor Roach.
On behalf of the Empty Nest Caucus, I would like to throw my complete support to the Young Parent Caucus and allow for discretion. I would, however, like to add a friendly amendment that any counselor on Zoom put counselor in front of their name for 2 reasons. One is it more clearly identifies us to the public as counselors. And the other thing that it does, which is very important, is it groups us so that you can see all of the counselors grouped together and not interspersed among the public and among staff. Now, there are folks who use the same Zoom account for different purposes, and it means that every time they come into a meeting, they have to rename, and I get that. That's a bit of a hardship. If there are anybody who has any problems with that, I'll help them navigate that. But if you see my name up there, I do it, and others have made this a practice, and I would add that to our Zoom conventions. But otherwise, I want to throw my 100% support to the Young Parent Caucus.
Great. Councilor Damabed, then Councilor Leary. And then I've got 2 online. I believe I've got councilors. Oh, look at that. Councilor Martha Bixby. And this is amazing. Look at what's going on here.
I just would like to echo Councilor Roach's idea, and for those of us with long names, I've found CLLR is a good abbreviation that keeps everything in the same window, and I'd also suggest, as Councilor Roach did, adding your ward and your pronouns. I guess I had and I think the idea of including a avatar photo for when you can't be on camera makes a lot of sense. I guess I just wanted to clarify, was your request or guidelines or suggestion that counselors who are in meetings for committees that they're not on, that they keep their cameras off but have a photo? Or
It's never keep your camera off, in my opinion. It's, if it's your committee, maybe there's a slightly higher bar.
Got it.
Try and be on camera. Is that a fair way to say it, I think?
Understood.
And
Thanks.
if your backdrop is a photo of yourself, right, avatar with the counselor, I like that ad, that'd be great. Counselor Leary. No, I'm lying. Yes, no, we'll go to Counselor Leary and then Bixby and this is Mickley. Yep, okay.
I'll be brief. I mean, I agree that a best practice is to have your camera on and be a full participant, but I would say this, if it's your committee, I think it's more important that you do that. If you're another counselor from another committee, you weighing in or listening, you might be making dinner or doing something else. But if it is your committee, then I do think you should participate fully with your camera on. And if it's difficult, just discuss that with the chair ahead of time. And of course, sometimes you have to take a break. We all do that. I'm not talking about those 2-minute breaks. I'm talking about the whole time. No. And also, just if you're running a meeting, especially without a picture, which is a great idea, you can miss a counselor coming in late, and that's happened to me before. You don't see them, especially if there are a lot of people on the screen.
Thank you. Counselor Martha Bixby.
Thank you, and I'll let you all go home. But I appreciate the flexibility here as well as sort of this guideline. I mean, I do think it helps folks be present and sort of know who's there, along with the previous conversation to see. But as with tonight, I had to do something with the kids. I forgot to turn back the camera on until this came up. So I think allowing for all of us to be here in the ways that we can is great. So thank you for both the suggestions here and flexibility and understanding.
Yep, and my apologies for calling you out. Counselor Mickley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will keep my camera off to demonstrate how one can participate in the civic engagement process without a camera on. A few points. First, Councilor Roach, thank you for your comments. Completely appreciate that support. Completely agree with your idea. Put up, Councilor. Good suggestion. A few reasons why I disagree with this proposition. And I definitely, admittedly, am one that prefers to keep my camera off a lot. So first is, as others with young kids, as someone else with young kids, you just don't know what kid's crawling in the background, what kid's gonna come up at what time. And if you want to make city council accessible and inviting to parents with young kids, having rules like this about camera policies is not a great way to do it. If you want to make it inviting, allow people to use their camera when they want to and when they don't want to. And the second thing is about focus. Some people might be able to focus really well staring at a screen. Some people might get distracted. I personally get distracted. I find myself focusing much better when not looking at a screen, when not on screen, when not having a bunch of tabs that I'm staring at. And I think just because someone's camera is on doesn't mean they're necessarily focused. And, you can obviously watch the eyes of any counselor during a meeting that does have their camera on. Who knows what people are looking at? Are there rules about how many tabs on a computer a counselor can have open, on what other screens they could be looking at the same time? I personally find myself focusing better when I'm off camera, when I actually have a chance to stand, to walk around, not looking at a screen. And I know that might not be, I guess, the social mainstream thing to do. And definitely during my first term, I felt, I guess somewhat of a societal pressure to keep my camera on. But then I thought, what is actually going to make me the most productive, effective counselor? And I started to think less about appearances and more about productivity. And I think for me personally, listening rather than looking at a screen helps me be more engaged, helps me be more productive. And that's the types of issues that I'm concerned about, is not appearances, but substance. So I firmly think this should just be a personal choice. Thank you.
Counselor Lucas.
Thank you. So I think the best practice should be counselors should make every best attempt to have their camera on. I think there are times when I am in a Zoom meeting, committee meeting, which is not my own, or a community meeting where I am either cooking dinner, doing laundry, cleaning, whatever else, So having the camera on really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because I won't be at the computer. But I think counselors should make every best attempt to have their camera on to show that you are there and participating remotely. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I see no further hands online or analog. Now I do. Councilor Chong.
As one of the remaining members of the Young Parent Caucus, I will weigh in. I feel similarly to Councilors Grossman and Bixby. I think that generally part of the process of us being here and representing ourselves and representing the community and having as close to a flexible but also interactive type of dialogue is to be, showing our face and engaging. If you can't be there in person, then we have Zoom, and I'm fine with having on camera be the norm, particularly in your own committee meetings. That said, yes, there are times like when everything goes haywire, and I will have some of those, I'm sure, in the coming month with all the different budget meetings. But I think there is something about looking someone in the eye when you're speaking to them in a conversation. There is something about having your camera on in a Zoom meeting where I think it shows that you're paying attention to the conversation at hand. And I think it is, in some ways, a sign of respect to the topic and to the people who are participating in the conversation, whether those are constituents or staff members. So I'm fine with the suggestion that you had given, Mr. President, and as long as I think if there are extenuating circumstances, we can be, emailing our committee chair and just letting them know, hey, I'm going to have to be off camera tonight because this happened. I think that's fine.
Great, thank you. So with that comment, I think we're all set. I hope everyone here enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, because I honestly do believe that, nope, time's out. One more comment, Councilor Block.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry to have to do this, and everyone, including myself, may want to leave, but I had a transparency topic that was different from the ones that we all discussed earlier. And I'll just mention it, and maybe it's something that you put on agenda for another similar meeting. But I'm looking at a downloaded PDF from the last City Council session in which everybody's name and contact information is on one page. And this was available to the public. It's something that I found useful as a city councilor, and I found even more useful as just a resident. And I think this should be restored to our website for the sake of our own transparency about who we are and how we can be reached. And I've heard that some members of this body don't want their addresses included. I find that odd for a public figure, but if that's the case, they can just put the city council address and people will be able to reach them that way. So there may be lots of opinions about this, and you may not want to extend this meeting, and I understand, but I at least wanted to raise this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I realize that I am falling short of one of my own commitments, which was to leave a lot of time for other people to bring stuff up. But it is 9:45. I promise that'll be on the next agenda. But I do think it's 9:45-ish. I think we're good. Or at least I'm good for the night. Does that make sense? Councilor Maliki.
I'd just like to agree with Councilor Block. I thought, my understanding was that one-pager PDF was going to be restored, so I would like...
It is going to be restored.
Great, okay.
Yes. Yes. Whether or not what's on it is a different story, but
But it's
yes,
just like
it's going to be,
the one
it's
pager was
going to
just the
be
easiest
restored.
fat
We're
format.
down 4 people in the clerk's office. Hey, by the way, Josh, just so you know, have a lovely night, but we're down 4 people in the clerk's office. Let's have patience. Thank you. And with that said, have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much for your help.
Good night.
Recording stopped.